On today's episode of The Unwritten Rule, got a big show. Talking a lot of men's basketball. We're going to recap all of the semantics from the Alabama game for Mizzou. We did that with Drew King of PowerMizzou. So we had him on, got his take on a bunch of stuff. Great interview with him. Kind of give us some insight on the rest of the team going forward. Couple of updates. Talked about John Tonje being out for the year. Talked about the whole Nate Oats pushing Aidan Shaw situation. So we dove into all of that, the game, what's kind of gone wrong, and what should we kind of be expecting for Mizzou men's hoops the rest of the way. Also talked a little bit about the freshmen and the future guys not the freshmen, I guess, the 2024 guys, with some of them being All-American nominees. So we had a great interview with him. Before all that, we talked football, Isaiah Hastings decommitting, and then Zion Young, the new guy from Michigan State, the defensive end. So, great stuff. We then finished with quick hits. We got Jersey of the Week, Sean East Mainbirds, and the best things we learned. So great show. Really enjoyed the interview with Drew. So that's definitely a part you're going to want to stick around for. Going to get started. But first and foremost, a quick word from our friends at BetOnline. The NFL playoffs right around the corner and the NBA season in full swing. BetOnline has you covered with all the up-to-second odds, news, and scores. With additional odds, trends, and info on both desktop and mobile devices, you can access the world's best wagering information at any time. So head to BetOnline today to get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. I mentioned the playoffs. We're going to do the Fantastic Four picks now in the intro, the moment everyone's been waiting for. Kenny and Peyton are in a heated race for first. So they didn't. Usually we make our picks on the dock before we get into the show. Kenny and Peyton didn't, so they're both, they can both haggle about it. But we're going to do that. We got all those lines from BetOnline, so we'll do that now. First game, Kenny, I'm leading the charge. I know that normally you lead the charge on Fantastic Four, but you have to focus on these picks. So first game, we're going to do the divisional playoffs. I went in chronological order. Texans, Ravens. It's the Birds by 9.5. I picked the Texans. Not that matters. What order are we doing this? Are you are we switching
regular
each
order.
game? Regular order, just every time?
Yep.
Okay,
Let's do it.
What does that give an advantage to Peyton?
Yeah, because then I could just switch my pick.
You could. All right, Kenny. Texans, Ravens.
Okay. I'm only a game behind. You can see hand is shaking right now. If you go on the YouTube,
he's nervous.
This is everything.
Subscribe to
here.
the YouTube.
I got to take the Texans though. Taking my hometown dogs. We're going all the way this year.
10 is just too much. I'm taking the Texans as well.
Okay, so there's a split on that. Packers, Niners. I love what the Packers did against the Cowboys. I still have the Niners. They kind of own them in the playoffs. Again, doesn't matter. Upset?
Yeah.
Cover?
I agree that they own them. I still think 49ers are winning. It's a lot of points, like Peyton said. Packers are playing good football. I think they keep it within 10 points. Go Packers.
Okay, Packers cover.
10 is just too much. I took the Packers.
All right. They're tied again. You guys get a split at some point. Bucks, Lions. I thought the line on this was interesting. 6.5. I still took the Lions at home. I love what the Bucks did against the Eagles. I love Baker. Great guy. Love what he did to Kansas. Kenny?
I'm in the same boat. This is one I keep going back and forth on.
Yeah,
it's been annoying me like crazy right now. But I think the Lions can win by a touchdown.
Okay. Peyton?
Okay, finally have a split here. I think it's awesome that these two quarterbacks are about to play for a spot, one game from the Super Bowl. I don't think the Lions lose this game. I think they do win, but I am taking the Bucks to cover. I think the Bucks will cover. I really think Baker's playing good football. That's a team playing inspired. That's proof. Once you get to the dance, anything can happen. So I hope the Bucks keep it close.
I love both of these teams just with Baker. I'm happy if either of them win. I will root for them, especially if they're playing the Niners. Last one, Chiefs, Bills. Tough line, 2.5 in Buffalo. They're finally playing this game in Buffalo. I still took the Chiefs. I think this game has been too close over the years. I think whatever team is the underdog, I'm always going to pick to cover in this game. Are you the same, Kenny?
Hard to beat a team twice in 1 year.
Yeah.
But good thing it's a new year. It's 2024. It's not 2023 anymore. I'm not going to pick against the Bills until somebody beats them. And then I won't be able to pick against them at all once they get beaten because we're in the playoffs. I'm taking Bills minus 2.5.
All right.
I don't know, man. I picked against Mahomes last week. It didn't work. I should not do it. But I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to take the Bills in this one. I think this has to be the year they do it. They're at home. This is the weakest the Chiefs have been in years. I just think the Bills are they feel like a team that's destined to do it this year. I'm gonna take the Bills.
Okay. All right. So the game we're all gonna have circled is that Bucks Lions game, which again, that could like come down even if the Lions win to like a late score, maybe an inopportune field goal, some bad time. Like it's a weird line. So that's the one to keep an eye on. Bucks Lions. Kenny has the Lions, Peyton has the Bucks in the race for first place now in the NFL playoffs. Nice. Thank you to Bet Online for supplying all of those lines. With that, we will kick it to ourselves and get the show started. The unwritten rule starts right now.
Marcel, where are you going with that disc? You are not putting that on again. Marcel, okay, if you press that button, you are in very, very big trouble.
Attention. Everybody stop what you're doing. It's time for The Unwritten Rule, a Mizzou sports podcast brought to you by the Believe Network, alongside Peyton Haverman and Kenny Van Doren. Here is your host, Jack Knowlton.
Welcome back to the Unwritten Rule. Today is Friday, January 19th, and the iconic Missouri Tigers career of Isaiah Hastings has unfortunately come to an end. Never forget the Isaiah Hastings era. Was committed for less than a week, about a week to Mizzou.
5 days.
Yeah, I don't even think it was a week. About 5 days after he transferred from Alabama, he decommitted from the Tigers and then immediately flipped to Syracuse. So, kind of followed in the wake of Kevin Peoples leaving with Blake Baker, of course, that D-line coach. But then the Tigers very quickly said, not so fast, my friend, not so fast. And went out and got another pickup along the D-line. Not a defensive tackle, more of a defensive end prospect, but Zion Young, the sophomore from Michigan State, had 26 tackles, and 1.5 sacks last year for the Spartans. So, yeah, just thoughts on that in general. Going from a guy in Hastings who hadn't played but was maybe a higher recruit to a guy in Zion Young that last year was a contributor on a Big Ten, defense. I thought that was kind of interesting. I was texting Peyton about that. Like, I'd almost rather have a guy with a little bit of D1 experience rather than someone who's still kind of unproven, even if they were a high recruit. But Hastings out, Zion Young in. What are y'all's thoughts?
I think, honestly, just from a need standpoint, it honestly kind of makes a little more sense. For the record, I'm not saying this is an either or. I doubt it was. I think they would have taken Hastings and Young. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably have taken Young just because Mizzou's added 2 defensive tackles this cycle already in Webb and McClellan. So, I think they're a little better there. And D end, it's a little shoddy outside of Johnny Walker. We know he's going to be back. He's going to have to kind of be the Darius Robinson of the D-line next year. And then you've got like Joe Moore back in the fold, Austin Firestone, a lot of guys that aren't totally proven. Joe Moore and Austin Firestone had their moments, but they were kind of more rotational guys. So you bring in a guy like Zion Young, the numbers don't jump off the page, but maybe one of him or Firestone or Moore can really kind of take that leap, be next to him. Oh, and by the way, Williams Nwaneri is in the room as well. So I'm sure someone will emerge out of that group, and the others will, like they did with the DNs last year, just rotate in, make a play or two a game. That's really all you can hope for. So Hastings, you never want to lose a commitment, especially from a guy like Isaiah Hastings, who went to Bama, had some Power 5 offers, but just a casualty of losing a coach. Brand Brown, the new head coach up in Syracuse, he's killing it on the recruiting trail. So I'm sure that really won't matter to Mizzou much. I doubt Mizzou and Syracuse will be in many recruiting battles, but in this case, it makes sense for Hastings to move on. If that's the only one they lose, then Mizzou can count itself lucky, really, because a lot more guys could have always hopped in that portal after losing Baker and Peoples.
I can't wait to play in the great state of New York. I think that's what Drinkwitz could have said if these two teams were actually going to face each other, and then he could recruit some people in Syracuse, get some more battles.
Sure.
This does go back to what I talked about last week. I didn't really see Kevin Peoples' name out there a lot in the recruiting sphere other than Williams Laneri. This is just a casualty of losing one of your best assistants, and that comes with it. Isaiah Hastings, not a lot of experience behind him in games, but SEC caliber player at SEC experience, and that's what he brought to the table. Another guy coming in from the Power 5 school, Zion Young coming in, and that's just what you need. If you're going to go out there and get guys that have excelled at, a group of 5 level, that's great and all, but you still want those guys that have the experience in coaching staffs in those rooms against opponents that you'll be facing as well. And you've seen that with multiple guys in this transfer cycle.
Yeah, that was kind of the other question I wanted to go. And I know we talked a whole lot about basketball. There wasn't a ton of football news. By the way, Mizzou still doesn't have a DC, so we still have, kind of not that
on
much
the
update.
DC front. There is a name out there that I think will catch quite a few people off guard. I'm not going to say it because it's AWOL information, but
okay, that's what I was going to ask. But
yeah.
So there's some stuff, there's some rumblings, but still haven't anyone out there. But I guess that's what I was going to ask is, I think especially, and this isn't an uber fair comparison, but obviously in another SEC program in like Alabama losing Saban, they've had like 25 guys transfer, and he was an iconic coach. But when Mizzou, loses a DC in Baker, loses Kevin Peoples, I don't think you guys are you guys surprised with, how many guys have still been willing to kind of, I guess, stay and stick it out, haven't, opted to top in the portal and maybe test the waters, with the exception, obviously, of Hastings, who was coming from somewhere else already.
Well, what's interesting with that, it is a good sign that they've only lost one commit in the portal. I don't know if players could necessarily hit the portal right now because Baker left after the deadline. I know there's a rule about coaching changes.
Oh, that's a good point. I guess I don't know
only
if it
for head
applies
coaches.
Yeah,
I figured that was only for head
You're
coaches.
right.
But I mean, normally when that happens, you still see guys say, "Hey, in the spring window, I'm gone," and maybe that still does happen. I don't know. At this point, I kind of would wager we would have heard something about maybe some contributors leaving, particularly in the safety room. I mean, I would have looked at guys like Dalen Carnell or maybe Marvin Burks as guys I would have watched. But I mean, you look at both of them. I mean, and Kenny has explained this before. I mean, the way Mizzou recruits is so different than just a DC is trying to lock in guys. I mean, Drinkwitz normally has a hand in almost all these recruitments, so I'm sure that helps. Hopefully, it doesn't get any worse. We'll see what happens after the spring window. I'm sure, but for now, I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Primary example of that recently is Trajan Greco, who flipped from Georgia Tech. Primary guy he talked to wasn't the safeties coach in DC. It was, he talked with Blake Baker a lot, but his guy was Drinkwitz. Drinkwitz was pushing for him for months, even when he was verbally committed to Georgia Tech, getting him to flip. And he finally announced that declaration a couple weeks ago at the All-American Bowl. And that's just kind of how it works. And you got to, a lot of these kids are told, you're not committing just to me, you're committing to the school. And a lot of coaches will bring guys with them to say, you're not coming with me, you're committed to the school, maybe down the line, if it's not working, then you find somewhere else to go. But this is who you committed to. You didn't commit to me.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good read on, how you can kind of hold it together even when there are coaching changes, within the staff, or underneath Drinkwitz rather. It again goes into, I think we were talking off air how, he's kind of embracing that CEO role. It's he has a hand in everything, but he's delegated in this last season, and we've seen kind of the results of it. Last thing I'll ask before we kick it to ourselves talking to Drew. This is another thing I texted Peyton, and I'm curious both of your guys' thoughts on this. There is that spring window. I think it's like 15 days beginning in mid to late April, if I remember right. I looked it up yesterday. But what are the biggest needs now heading into that? Obviously, it might be a little tough to tell without a DC in the fold, but on both sides of the ball, where do you guys see potential more potential portal ads maybe coming in?
I'd still like to see Mizzou add a corner. They got Toriano Pride. They have Dre Norwood and Marcus Clark back in the fold. I kind of wouldn't be super comfortable if that's all they do. I would think one more corner probably solidifies that room. Probably another defensive tackle. I'm sure they will look at that, considering they would have had 3 with Hastings. Maybe they look at another DN. Who knows, really? And then the second one, I think the second biggest need really outside of corner, I'd say a left guard. I still don't think you have like a true starter penciled in there. The rest of the O line, I think you have your guys already filled in. Hayden Green's going to be your left tackle. Tallis in the center, obviously. Cameron Johnson at right guard. I would not move Armand Membu from right tackle. I think he's been great there. They should keep him there. But left guard, I mean, I'm not sure really who right now I would feel super comfortable with stepping in and taking it. I know Reichert has maybe a chance to take that spot. They got Javen Richardson out of the portal. Maybe he could kick the guard. But we'll see. I think left guard and corner are the 2 I would say are the biggest needs.
I agree with that. I'm also not against another linebacker, an experienced linebacker that is as well. We liked what we saw from Newsom and Hicks down the stretch, stepping up for those guys that are injured. And I know, Jack, you're very big on what you saw from Newsom. Brayshawn Littlejohn, another guy that they're very excited about, especially as a leader on special teams or even at the linebacker position next season in his second year. I just wouldn't be against getting some depth. You saw Hopper come in 2 years ago and really turn it up and elevate his play in the SEC. And I think they can do that same thing if with DJ Smith remaining on the staff.
Yeah. Oh, Peyton, you have another thing?
They added Flag. So that definitely.
Oh, shoot. I totally forgot about him. Yeah.
It's all right. It's just a lot of names. It's a lot of names. I forgot about him too, to be honest. But again, who knows? Your depth point still stands. Like maybe they go after.
I still would say.
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe they still.
I don't think any extra depth would hurt there. 100%.
Yeah, certainly not. Because I mean, as good. I do like Tristan Newsom. I thought he had some fantastic games when he stepped in late. But him and Chuck Hicks certainly had their off days too. So like, throwing them in the fold. You're expecting a lot of them. So maybe bring in some veteran help. Whatever. Brayshawn Littlejohn's got to play. If he gets like a forced fumble, the Littlejohn memes in the ensuing winning video that will be made will go nuts. So he better get in the lineup. I think you give Caleb Downs a call. Just give him a blank check. Tell him to sign it. I don't know.
I'm sure everyone in the country will be doing just that.
Hey, you're doing a disservice if you're not at least picking up the phone. Now let's pick up the phone, send someone down there saying, "Hey."
I mean, Eastern Michigan. The worst that you can be told is no.
Yeah. You give him a call. Columbia's really nice in the fall. That's all you can say to him. You get a chance at a revenge game, down in Tuscaloosa. Get booed.
Pretty campus.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Obviously, it's all gonna, a lot of it might change depending on what guys jump in the portal, both possibly from Mizzou and from other schools when that spring window hits. But a thing to look forward to. Again, rumblings, still no DC yet. Maybe we'll get it soon. We'll have all of it, all the coverage on it, reporting when that all comes down the pipeline. For now, let's segue. We're going to kick it to ourselves. We talked to PowerMizzou's Drew King about the Alabama game and the whole Nate Oats situation, Nate Oats shove situation. That's what we led with. So great conversation with him and kind of the immediate and long-term future of Missouri men's basketball. So we will kick it to ourselves to do that. Okay, we now welcome on a very special guest, a friend of the show. We love talking to the PowerMizzou guys. We got Drew King back on. Drew, good to see you first and foremost. I talked to you a couple days ago to preview the game we're about to recap. I know Kenny and Peyton hadn't seen you for a while. We hadn't been on the show. So welcome back. We've got an eventful game to dive into. And I think, we maybe weren't expecting it to be as eventful as it turned into with Mizzou against Alabama. 93-75, Alabama wins. We can get into the last 10 minutes of the game as well, because I think, that's where it all kind of went wrong for Mizzou. They were hanging with Alabama. But I do think we need to start with the push, where, this was a chippy game. I don't know how. I certainly wasn't expecting it to be as physical as it was. I think from a Mizzou perspective, turning the game into that helped them until they kind of ran out of gas at the end. But we can get into all that. But then it all kind of divulged, near halftime. There's the scrum over by Alabama's bench. Nate Oats pushes Aidan Shaw. There's no tech called. They called, I think, offsetting ones on Alabama's Aaron Estrada and Sean East. No tech. After the game, Gates and Oats both spoke about it. We had the call to the SEC, who then gave Oats, I believe it was a public reprimand, was ultimately the punishment given away. Sounded to me more like the equivalent of like your 5th grade teacher yelling at you the next day for like pissing off the substitute. I don't know. What was your read on all of that? I know it was a big conversation point on both sides.
Yeah, so I don't know if y'all had this, but back in kindergarten, we had like a wall with like our names on it, and then like 3 strips of paper, and it was red, yellow, and green.
Right.
So I think the SEC told Nate Oats to go put his name on yellow. That's kind of what they did in this case. But no, so obviously like horrible situation here. Cannot have a coach putting his hands on a player. Nate Oats sort of kind of apologized afterward. It said, it's an unfortunate situation, which like, no kidding, Nate, it's an unfortunate situation. And so I kind of have a feeling that maybe Mizzou's coaches didn't see it happen in the moment because they didn't have too much of a reaction to it, which was a little bit surprising because like Dennis Gates is somebody who stands up for his players almost more than anybody I know. So I don't think that he would have been okay with what had happened if he had seen it when it did happen. But yeah, so like I said, Nate Oats apologized. Dennis Gates afterward, I think, made a really good point about what if Aidan Shaw had retaliated? What was going to happen there? And made a point that like Aidan deserves a lot of credit for showing restraint. Said after the game, he gave Aidan a big hug, said, "I'm really proud of you for what you did in that moment." And then I was pretty disappointed with the SEC's response to it, not because the punishment for Nate Oats didn't go far enough. Like, if you're going to reprimand him, it is what it is, right? You could have suspended him a game, but if not, whatever, right? But I think that there did need to be more discipline in the moment, specifically from the officials. And they kind of let Nate Oats get away with that, despite being like right there in front of him, seeing it happen. And there was like no accountability for the referees in this situation, at least publicly from the SEC. And I felt like Mizzou at least deserved that there was an acknowledgement of wrongdoing here. So that's kind of my whole takeaway from everything. I don't know if y'all have any different perspectives here.
You don't see like, in any sport these days, it's a very small group that organizations, the SEC, NFL, whoever it is, don't really call out the refs. They didn't really like go after who could have prevented this, who could have stopped it, who could have, made the right call in the moment. And I think there was a clip that went around right after at the end of the first half. Tamar Bates kind of, like we said, it was a chippy game going back and forth. And Dennis, kind of grabbed him and told him, stop it, like stop talking. I'm not going to say what he exactly said that you could read what he mouthed, but he was telling him to stop. What does that kind of say about Dennis's character? Just trying to, put everything down, don't let anything escalate.
Yeah, so like one of the hallmarks of Dennis Gates on the sideline is he's always level-headed. He's very cool, right? Very calm in stressful situations. And so I think he expects the same out of his players. And so in that moment, for Tamar to try to mouth off to Alabama's bench at halftime, I think it was kind of out of character for what Dennis Gates expects from his team. And so I didn't get the chance to ask him about it afterward. We might get to at the press conference tomorrow. But yeah, that was an interesting moment in a game full of them, right? Because later on you have Grant Nelson getting in Ant Robinson's face after a block. He picks up a tech. And then later in the game, I think, Jack, you mentioned it, like you had offsetting technicals. I didn't even see because like they were showing a replay during the game. And so I don't know exactly what that was for, but I think it was Noah Carter and either Latrell Wrightsell or Aaron Restrada, one of those two players from Alabama. And so yeah, it was just a super chippy game, but it really did start with Nate Oats shoving Aidan Shaw. Like that's kind of where everything began.
And does Missouri maybe need to kind of, I don't know, it almost seemed for 75% of that game, they played almost more inspired, just kind of a lot better than I think they've played in other stretches this season. Do they maybe need to just try and kind of be that physical, chippy team, kind of just drag teams down into the mud to say, like, just try and just have that style of play?
Well, you'll remember, Peyton, like Dennis Gates after the Minnesota game said Caleb Grill getting the technical is what inspired us to win, right? And so I think playing with that kind of an edge definitely could help in some of these situations like that. We can talk about it a little bit later. I mean, but I think this team has pretty sorely missed Caleb Grill from being in the rotation. I don't think it's helped that they've played some tougher teams since he's been out. Like he went out right before the Kansas game, which is when the strength of schedule kind of peaked. So yeah, they've been missing him pretty bad. And without him, like I don't know that there's a lot of guys that can bring that kind of physicality consistently. But you're right. They did do a better job of it against Alabama on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like, there's so many incidents you can examine to just kind of get a read on, who Dennis is and maybe who some of his players are and how that, kind of gets balanced. I think a lot of the times we're complimenting Tamar Bates on being kind of a fiery guy. I know during the Kansas game, he was the energizer when he would make shots. He was, hyping his teammates up, hyping the bench up. And sometimes, yeah, when a game gets chippy, you have Dennis kind of the calming presence, able to reel that in and say, all right, keep it about your own team. Don't do anything that's, then gonna, have some sort of ramification or take something out on the other team. I think you said it perfectly. I think you brought a good angle with the shove. I think we're having a lot different conversations if Oats gets a tech or even tossed for what he did. But it's the fact that there was no accountability given to the people who could have, I think you're right. Like it would have been nice for the SEC to put in that statement if that's all you're going to punish Nate for. Put in that statement, hey, we're also issuing the refs a public reprimand for a misjudgment there. Yeah. But it was an incident in a lot of instances. And I want to segue from there because you mentioned, the Minnesota game, Caleb Grill gets the tech that kind of galvanizes Mizzou. They go on and win. Alabama, it seemed like had the same thing happen to them when you mentioned that Grant Nelson incident. He blocks Anthony Robinson. He yells something at him, gets called for a tech. Shawnee's hits the free throws, and then Alabama for the rest of the game outscored Mizzou. I wrote it down, 45-29. The defense and the kind of energy that was there, the way I described it was it just kind of seemed like Mizzou ran out of gas. So I guess diving into the game there, I mean, they were in this game on the road against a good offensive team, and then in the last 10 minutes, it kind of felt like it fell apart almost after that technical. What did you see happen with this team's kind of defensive energy and just, kind of overall presence on that end of the floor? Because it seemed to just kind of disappear.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up, they were in this game. If you think about the whole season, they've been in every game other than Illinois, right? That's the only one where it was a disaster from buzzer to buzzer, right? But Kansas, they had a 9-point lead. Seton Hall, they only lose by 6. Georgia, right? They have a lead with 2 minutes left. I wrote in my column today, and Gabe really wrote about it after the South Carolina game, but they were up on South Carolina, Georgia, and Jackson State late in the game and just couldn't close out against any of the three. If you flip those to wins, we're talking about an 11-6 team instead of an 8-9 team, which is not a great much better, but it's at least like you have a shot at having a winning record this year. And so, yeah, like Alabama, it kind of reared its head again where Mizzou is in the game and then just kind of falls apart at the end. You mentioned the defense. Part of it was the defense, but it was also like Alabama just started hitting everything. Rylan Griffin had the 2 back-to-back threes that kind of put Alabama ahead for good, and both of them, Sean East had a hand in his face. Like, you couldn't really ask him to defend it much better. But for this team, it pretty much seems like they can be good on offense or they can be good on defense, right? And they have really struggled to be good on both sides of the ball throughout the whole year. And so that's kind of been the biggest issue during these first 4 games of conference play is they haven't found a good balance yet.
Talk about that balance, personnel, depth, the guys coming off the bench, who's going to start each week. Big conversations all across social media and with us as well, and trying to figure out who's going to be those guys that come off the bench and still going into these games. You're seeing 6, 8 guys coming off and very limited play. You can say that. Mabor only played 4 minutes. Kurt Lewis played 2 against Alabama. Where do you kind of just go from here, though? A lot of people calling for the freshmen, and Peyton's talked about it. See the freshmen out there. Sometimes it's just not even inspiring play. It doesn't seem like they're actually getting better in what they're doing. Can you kind of tell us, from your perspective, being around the coaching staff, how they kind of evaluate and go forward, especially, in a season that just feels lost already?
Yeah, the one thing that you can't question about the team is the fight, right? Like I said, they're not getting blown out in most of these games. They were in that Alabama game. I think they were down 5 with 5 minutes left to play, and then before it all kind of fell apart. So, it's not like they're getting run over by every single team that they're going up against. And my editor Gabe likes to put it this way: like, he's like, they played to the level just below their competition. And so that makes it feel a little bit more frustrating if I'm a fan, right? Because it's a team that shows it's capable of coming up with some wins and then comes up short every time, right? And so it would almost be easier if they were getting blown out, because then you could just write them off and say this team isn't any good. I think this team has the potential to be good. It just hasn't figured everything out yet. And so moving forward, they do have some interesting paths they can take here, because a week ago I would have said, keep winning, keep playing the seniors. You never know. I think you owe it to the team to at least see what happens when Caleb Grill gets back and how good everything can be there. But then this week they shut down John Tonje for the season. I think that the plan is to redshirt him and bring him back next year and get that medical hardship waiver for him. And I was looking into it. There's a possibility they could do the same thing with Caleb Grill. He meets the criteria for a medical hardship waiver. They haven't said that they're going to do that, to be clear. This is just speculation on my part. But in December, which is when he had the injury, they said his timeline was 5 to 7 weeks. And it's been about 6 weeks now, and Dennis Gates hasn't really refreshed the timeline at all. So it's unclear if we'll see him again. If you're 0-4 in conference play, like you said, there's not a whole lot to play for. The season's kind of lost when you're 0-4. So it might be better to save him for next year and just do what you can this year, develop the freshman, like you said. I don't think the team's going to throw in the towel at any point, and Dennis Gates is going to make the freshmen earn whatever opportunities they get. But with those 2 guys injured, on top of Caleb Brown, who was a guy that he's not going to have a huge impact on the season, but they were anticipating he could play at least. They're pretty short-handed, and coming into this year, a big strength of the team was going to be its depth, and all of a sudden it's a team that doesn't have any depth. So I think that those are kind of the biggest issues moving forward, and so they'll keep plugging away at it. But like you said, like I'm not sure that there's a whole lot left to play for, being 8-9 right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump back in here with a follow-up on that. Talking about Tanje's injury, I heard on the broadcast that the cutoff was this Alabama game. If he had played in this game, he wouldn't be able to get that medical red shirt. So, perfect timing there to kind of make that decision for him. Like we talked about a lot of these swing games, being in it the whole time. If Tanjay was healthy the whole year, if you had Caleb Grill this last month, I mean, how many of those games do you think would just flip the other way for Mizzou?
Sure. So Dennis Gates went on Tiger Talk last night, and Mike Kelly asked him, what did Mizzou fans not get to see from John Tanjay? And Dennis Gates said he was our best player this summer, and worked really, really hard trying to come back from that foot injury, but was just a shell of himself. And so I think that they were expecting him to shoot better. I think he was only making 33% of his threes. But if you're talking about a guy being your very best player in the summer, John Tanjay was supposed to play a lot more minutes that he got. And so when you're missing a contributor like that, on top of Caleb Grill going out, this team lost like two of their best wings. Their only options right now are Tamar Bates and Kurt Lewis. Kurt doesn't always look like he's ready for big minutes. So if Tamar Bates goes to the bench, who do you send in for him right now, right? Your options are Anthony Robinson, who's kind of undersized for the small forward spot, or Noah Carter as a small forward next to two bigs, which doesn't always work out very well, or like maybe Trent Pierce, who is another guy who doesn't always seem ready for big minutes. And so, Caleb Grill or John Tanjay being healthy, I think could have really helped this team flip some of those close losses into wins.
And we've touched on the depth, and you just touched on it there. Sometimes the options coming off the bench are pretty murky. I believe Dennis said in his post-game conference, other than Jesus Carolero, who's kind of been big in conference play, he doesn't really know where the scoring off the bench is going to come from. We expected, like Kenny said earlier, and you touched on, the depth to be really kind of the selling point of this team. Obviously there's been injuries, but what's kind of been the problem for some of the other guys off the bench?
Yeah, so y'all want to hear something funny? I went back and listened to the podcast from the last time I was on, and I wrote down all the things I was right and wrong about before the season.
Let's run through it. I want to hear it.
Okay, so the very first thing that I wrote down was I said that Connor Vanover was going to play upwards of 20 minutes and have a really big role on this team.
Yeah.
Connor has been averaging about 11 minutes per game.
Okay.
He's cracked 20 minutes one time this season. Hasn't played quite to the level I thought he could. Coming into this year, he was the top shooting 7-footer in the country. This year, he's making 17% from three. So I think that they were hoping for a little bit more than that from Connor. Next thing I got wrong, I said that I was half wrong, half right here. I think Peyton, you had asked me who are some of the guys they can lean on when they need a clutch bucket. Right. So I said that I think Noah Carter is going to be leaned on a little bit more, and he has, but the percentages, his shooting percentages have dropped. He's shooting like a career low 3-point percentage right now. I also said that Caleb Grill might be a guy. He's been hurt. And then I also said that Sean East is probably the closest comparison to DeAndre Golston. I feel like I was pretty right on that. Next, I said that Ant was going to be buried on the bench. I said I didn't know how he's going to get on the floor playing behind Nick Honor and Sean East. And the answer is that Dennis Gates was going to start Nick Honor and Sean East together and then bring Ant off the bench behind him. Whether that was a good decision or not, I'm not going to say. I said that Trent Pierce was going to be a contributor on this team. Hasn't really been a contributor on this team. I voted.
You may have been given some misinformation there.
Yeah, well, and they put out the video where he scored 20 points and had 10 rebounds in the Jamaica scrimmage, right?
Yeah.
And so the dots kind of connected between what we were hearing and what he was doing on the floor. But it just hasn't translated this season.
Yeah, he's young. He's got time.
Right. But I don't think that he's necessarily looked like a guy who would exit college early to go to the NBA at this point, which is kind of what we were being told. I voted Mizzou to finish 6th in the SEC season poll. 6th place looks like a long way at the moment. And then lastly, I said that the San Antonio Spurs were going to be good in the near future, and they look abysmal right now.
Hey, I promised to not bring them up. You let the record show you brought them up. I did
Yes.
not bring them up.
And then the two other things I got right, I said that Tamar Bates could end up being a secondary creator in the offense. I think he surpassed everybody's expectations right now.
Yeah.
He's shooting over 50% from 3, which is unbelievable. And then on top of that, he's also 58% from 2, which is really good for somebody at his size. And he's a 90% free throw shooter. I don't think they could be asking more from Tamar Bates right now. He's really developed and kind of unlocked a new level in this system. And then the last thing was I said that, Sean probably wasn't going to shoot 22% from 3 again. I said that I think that he's been working on it in the summer, and you'll see it improve a little bit. It's improved a lot. He's doubled his percentage. It's gone up to 48% now. So, mostly wrong, but a little bit right.
I
think a lot of people got most of their takes.
Yeah,
about this team wrong.
Yeah, and you couldn't account. I mean, you brought up the injuries. Like, I think that's really significant, and especially the idea, Tanjay too, but especially with Caleb Grill, the idea that if they can get that done. And again, I know you said it's just speculative, but I think that was good information to look into, because I think that's a pretty exciting idea if they're able to get that done or choose to do that. He comes back next year, and like I've talked about, kind of being excited by the idea of like a Tamar Bates, Aidan Shaw. You throw like a sophomore Anthony Robinson out there. You include a Caleb Grill in that lineup, and that's an exciting 4 players, I think, looking forward. So, there's plenty to look forward to in the future. And we'll give you credit. I don't think you need to be too hard on yourself, except for on the Spurs. That was tough. But
Jack, I want to jump in there for a second. I think with a lot of stuff going into the season, I think even like last spring when we were talking in May, we were still on the radio looking at these transfers, trying to figure out a starting 5. We just thought about last season, a bunch of guys we'd never heard of coming to Mizzou that were transfers, 4 years, 5-year guys, and then just exploding and turning this program around instantly. I think, even though Dennis and his staff whiffed on a lot of top targets in transfer portal, we saw guys coming in and we were like, this is going to be one of those classes again. It kind of felt like more of a Conzo Martin class. You bring in guys that you don't know as well, and they just didn't really perform in your system right away. And I think that's where my mind went. I think I didn't know these guys, and I still kind of trusted what Dennis could do.
Yeah, Dennis definitely earned himself the benefit of the doubt with last season, right? And so moving forward, you can't give him that as much, right? So if they go into next season and they're bringing in more Horizon League transfers that you're not very familiar with, it's fair to be a little bit alarmed by that. But like you said, Dennis Gates has consistently outperformed expectations, so I think it was fair to think he was going to do that again this year.
Yeah, totally. It was an interesting, I feel like he just had the year 1 that a lot of people expect the new coach to have in their year 2. That's just kind of how it seemed to go. Looking ahead, they've got Florida on Saturday. That's at 7 p.m. on ESPN. Drew, I don't know if you've done any research on the Gators yet, but maybe I'll ask you this take. We're gonna end things off with some of the old guard from last year, and I want to ask you about some of the young players. But just to get ultimate doom and gloom about this team briefly, I've looked at the SEC, and it's a very weird year in the SEC. There's a lot of teams that feel a little bit fraudy, but there's a lot of very good teams as well. I look at the rest of Mizzou's games. I know they play Vanderbilt. That game's on the road. I struggle to find where on paper, I put them as a favorite, against another SEC program going forward. And we're talking about what, these teams are going to get into for the rest, or what this team should get into for the rest of the year. I mean, it feels a little bit scary for me going forward. But any thoughts on Florida? And then, just kind of looking ahead, maybe if you want to throw another prediction, we won't call you out if you're wrong this time. But, for kind of the rest of SEC play.
No, I mean, I threw myself into the right and wrong
Yeah,
pit,
he
so
did.
that's
We appreciate that kind of research. We don't do that kind of research on our own show.
You know, I gotta hold myself to a high standard,
Yeah, of course.
but you mentioned, you know, how many games are they gonna be favored to win? Probably not that many. Ken Palm has them beating Arkansas at home, Vanderbilt on the
That'd be
road,
big.
and then Ole Miss at home, which Ole Miss might be one of those fraudy teams that you were talking about, Jack.
Certainly.
Uh,
Certainly.
don't quote me on that though. Um, no, but so the way I would look at this is like up next you've got Florida, who's 1-3 in conference. You've got Texas A&M, who's 1-3 in conference, and then you've got South Carolina, who you just took into overtime and were one possession away from beating. Right after that, you've got the two games that you're favored to win, Arkansas and Vanderbilt. So if you're going to come up with some wins, like this next stretch of the schedule is where you kind of have to get them. Because after that, it does get a little bit tougher. You've got Texas A&M again. You've got Mississippi State potentially with Tolu Smith back. You've got Ole Miss on the road, Tennessee at home. Like those are going to be a step up in competition. So, yeah, like these next 5 games here are going to be important. Looking at Florida specifically, I think that the game plan is going to be pretty similar to what Mizzou did against Alabama, right? Because Florida and Alabama both like to play fast and shoot a lot of threes. Mizzou was able to kind of drag Alabama into the mud for a little bit and turn it into a rock fight, really slow the game down, make it a defense-oriented game. And I don't think that Florida necessarily has the same firepower as Alabama. So if you are able to slow them down offensively, I think that Mizzou would be able to come out with a win if they can get a lead and hold it for a little while.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Again, 7 p.m. on ESPNU. I just blanked on the outlet that you can watch them on. Putting them on any mainstream ESPN. It's, I guess, sure. Is there a point where a team gets so bad they go back to SEC Network Plus, like for all the non-con games? Like,
Vanderbilt, whatever happens in Vanderbilt,
that could be a stinker game. They're like 240 in Ken Palm. They're very bad.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
I think they're 191.
All right. They moved up. All right. Sorry, Vanderbilt. Sorry. Give them some respect. Respect the Commodores.
All right, let's talk about the future, though.
Mm-hmm.
Talked a lot about what's going wrong right now with the current team. 5 McDonald's All-American nominees right now: T.O. Barrett, Marcus Allen, Peyton Marshall, Trent Burns, who's been on here with us before, friend of the show, and Aidan Boateng. I mean, what can you just say about that? That's something we've never seen before. I don't think any Mizzou fan would have ever guessed that graphic would be posted.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll say this. I don't want to take anything away from that accomplishment. Congrats to them, McDonald's All-American candidates, right? Like that's a huge deal. Not a lot of people get to have that distinguished honor, but there's kind of a lot of McDonald's All-American candidates, y'all. I was a little bit surprised by like how many athletes got that distinction. But again, don't want to take anything away from them. That's a huge honor, right? And so, yeah, like you've got this really highly touted class. I don't know exactly where Rivals has them in the rankings right now, but I'm pretty sure it's still top 5. And so, yeah, you've got Honor Boateng, who I think has a realistic shot to make that McDonald's All-American team. Like he's been really good this year. T.O. Barrett has been playing for Link Academy this year, which is a prep school. It's in the same league that Trent Pierce was playing in last year. And kind of the word that we got about Trent Pierce, one of the reasons they were saying like, oh, he's looked really good this summer is they think that year at AZ Compass really helped him, right? And moved him up a level. And so they're kind of expecting the same out of T.O. Barrett. They think that he's going to be one of the best point guards to come out of this class. And then on top of that, you have Marcus Allen, who you mentioned like they need guys who can bring an edge and bring kind of a defensive mentality. Marcus Allen is your guy there. And then your two big men, you got Trent Burns, who will be kind of hopefully a better version of Connor Vanover as kind of a stretch big, and Peyton Marshall, who I think Dennis Gates called him the best passer in this class, regardless of position, which is pretty high praise for a 7-foot, 300-pound guy. He's been working in Overtime Elite League. I think he got traded at some point. I don't know how that league
What?
works. Because he was
that
fighting.
league is a circus. I'm sorry. Like, good for him, but he also like ended the kid's career. I saw that he had like a dunk on a guy and then stepped over him.
I also saw like he blocked somebody, got the rebound.
That's what it was. That's what it was.
The kid landed out of bounds and he tossed the kid
the ball off him.
But yeah, like Peyton Marshall, like every clip I see of him, I'm like really impressed, and that's obviously like a really talented league to play in. So I think that they have pretty high expectations for him as well. And then even after that, Kenny, the 2025 class, they're shaping up pretty well. It probably won't be as big of a group considering they're taking 5 freshmen this year, but they've already got Aaron Rowe locked up. He's going to be a 5-star guy in his class. They think that he'll be the best point guard of his cycle. And he's playing here at Tolton. I went out to his first game. Didn't play great. I think he only had 10 points that night, but last night he drops 30. So he's settling in pretty fine. And then, the other guys that they're looking at are all pretty high up in the rankings. They brought in a couple of 4-stars in for a visit in the past couple of months. I put out an article, I think like right at the beginning of the year, just going through all the guys they had offers out to. So you can find that on PowerMizzou.com. But yeah, like Dennis Gates, at least from a high school level, is killing it on the recruiting front. Yeah. And so the hope is that he'll be able to do the same when it comes to the transfer portal this offseason.
Yeah, that's right. A good point.
I just wanted to ask, you touched on it there. Obviously, you got a huge freshman class coming in. I'm sure they'll bring back Tamar Bates. Obviously, the 3 freshmen you assume will come back. Maybe they're bringing back Tanjay, maybe Grill on the medical red shirt. What does this team kind of need in the portal, you think? Because there's a lot of talent in that nucleus already, but maybe what do they need outside of that?
Yeah, so I think the obvious one is probably another experienced point guard. Ants looked good for a freshman. I don't know that he'll be ready to kind of be handed the keys to the car. He's been an awesome defender. I think he'll make an all SEC defensive team within his career. But offensively, it hasn't been quite as good, right? He kind of only scores when he steals the ball and runs up in transition. So that'll be kind of the biggest piece for his development. So I think it'll be important to bring in kind of a Nick Honor or Sean East type, where it's a guy who has proven he can run an offense and is able to help in that regard. And then I think one of the biggest pieces they've missed this year, especially when Kobe entered the draft, was they just don't have anybody who can score on the block. Noah Carter is pretty good when he gets a mismatch, but that doesn't always happen. But like, Connor Vanover hasn't been an elite post scorer. Aidan Shaw has a good percentage around the rim, but it's because it's all dunks, right? He's not backing anybody down. And Jesus is kind of the same thing. He's just kind of undersized, same as Noah Carter. So if they can find a 7-footer who they can dump it into at the end of a possession and let him go to work, I think that would have helped this team a lot this season.
Yeah, Kobe showed you don't even need a 7-footer as long as they have the talent of a first-round draft pick.
Exactly.
Just someone who can be a dog. Just looking to, I know at the recruits, Boateng is the highest. He's 26 of all of those guys. Did see Trent Burns. He jumped up 10 spots on Rivals recruiting rankings. I know that's all, arbitrary, whatever. But
right.
I guess if there's the most likely one that ends up, I think it's 24 guys make it on the All-American team. I would assume it would be Boateng, but yeah, it's an interesting look ahead. I think we've been it's funny, Drew, you bring up like the point guard, in Kenny and Peyton, like I feel like when we've watched this team before, like even really Nick or Sean, I guess we had Drew Smith for a little bit, but like that last Konzo era team had no point guard and it was disastrous. So I definitely,
Coleman.
yeah, Ron Coleman. So yeah, definitely, I think keeping the experience there. Yeah.
Yeah, and like right before I came on the pod, somebody tweeted out that they offered a 2026.
I saw that. Yeah,
4-star. I think Dylan Mingo. We have him ranked number 16th in the class of 2026. He's 6'5" as a sophomore, which is ridiculous, and he plays point guard. So, yeah, I think that's gonna be something that Dennis Gates looks for pretty much every season because guard play is pretty important for sure.
Yeah, the always recruiting Dennis Gates. Just trying to reload. Drew, last thing I think we have is we are going to flash back for the past just for the sake of the people, not to keep harping on the frustrations of this season. Have you been following any of the guys from last year's team? We asked kind of in the wake of Demoy Hodge. He got cut from the Lakers, but I think is now on the Rip City Remix, I believe it's Portland's G League team. Kobe, I think he had a triple double the other night.
Did he really? I didn't even see that.
I think
so. I haven't to the level that was hoping for.
It's okay. We're not expecting you to consistently watch G League film. That's a little bit rude to ask.
But the Clippers look pretty good. And Kobe Brown, even though it's been a small part, has been a part of that. And if they go on to win a title, like you can say that Mizzou had an NBA champion in back-to-back seasons, right? Which not a lot of schools get to say that. And then with Demoy, I have no idea how G League transactions work because they said that they traded a first-round pick.
Yeah,
the Rip City Remix did for
there's like a supplemental draft in the G League, so there are picks that can be exchanged. Which,
and so I knew about the draft because Isaiah Mosley got taken with like the 8th pick, and I saw a clip of him having a really nice dunk. Playing for the Wisconsin Herd. I don't know if Jack, you're a big fan of theirs, but
very familiar. I was excited when I saw you got on the Herd. Yeah,
but yeah, like I was like, how does Demoy get waived and then traded? That seems kind of backwards, but good for him. He hasn't been shooting as well as we're accustomed to seeing him shoot in the G League, and so. It made a little bit of sense for him to get kind of a reset on his career, and you knew that there was going to be interest in him once he did get cut. It was just a matter of like who was going to scoop him up. So credit to the Rip City Remix for doing that. I assume that DeAndre Golston is still balling out in Hungary somewhere. And so like I think it's still like a very positive thing that you're seeing these guys succeed at the pro level. Dennis Gates can still point to all 3 of them and say like, look, we sent them to the NBA after 1 season. Think of what we can do for you in 4 years. So, and last thing I'll say, I am working on a story about CY and kind of what makes him a recruiter. And CY has a lot of guys he sent to the NBA. I don't think people quite realize, but like Derek Favors was like a top 5 guy in his recruiting class, right? Spent 1 season at Georgia Tech, went to the league. Patrick Williams went from like I think 20th in our rankings to number 4 in the draft. Devin Vassell, I think, had 2 college offers or something like that, and became a lottery pick. Malik Beasley is another guy. Scotty Barnes is another guy. Like, so they have a really long track record of sending guys to the league, and so. Like that's always a bonus where a selling point for them is that like we can develop you. Look at who we've done that for already.
Yeah. Wow. Well, yeah. So everyone, I mean, keep an eye on, go subscribe to PowerMizzou. You can read that story.
Exactly.
That sounds great. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I know that was kind of a big selling.
It's not out yet, but I've got it kind of in the works at the moment.
Everyone's got to pre-subscribe and then they're ready.
Yeah,
for it.
yeah. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I know that was a big selling point with Gates with Leonard Hamilton too, was they sent a lot of guys to the league. Yeah, I mean, so a lot to look forward to for the future of Mizzou men's basketball, even if the present looks a little doom and gloom. Everyone just, calm down, stay locked
Take a
in.
breather.
Yeah. You're going to see some Aidan Shaw dunks. I want him to just keep making highlight plays so that next year everyone's like, this is a dog next year. But we'll see, Drew. Thank you so much. We'll have you back on maybe SEC tournament time. Maybe you can give us the scoop on how Mizzou can upset whoever they play, and maybe some March Madness picks in there. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. Looking forward to it. Absolutely.
Sounds good. All right. With that, everyone enjoy the rest of the show. We'll segue in quick hits. Thank you so much, Drew, for coming on.
Thanks, Drew.
No problem.
All right, quick hits time. Jerseys of the week. This is a big one, Kenny. Kick us off. Why didn't you talk about this in the basketball segment? They said it's because we saved it for Jersey of the Week. What is your Jersey of the Week, Kenny?
My Jersey of the Week goes to Mizzou men's basketball. There was a post on X this morning teasing new jersey, and we can all kind of assume it's going to be that old gold jersey with the white block M, a little bit bigger. The M is bigger than the rest of the wording, similar to the white jerseys that were worn last year as the throwback. Seen a lot of people speculating that these will replace the gold jerseys that Mizzou usually wore like on Saturday games in recent memory, sometimes for special occasion games. I'm not against that. I think it's great to finally have some retro ties thrown back into this program, and you get to just see what, where this team has come. And for all like the other big schools around the country, they got loads of jerseys for 5 straight years. We had the same 3 uniforms, so this is a cool thing to see.
Peyton, brief jersey review. What can you gather from the close-up clips? We were hoping this would get released while we were recording, but it hadn't.
Yeah, I'm excited because I think Kenny is correct. I think it's going to be the old gold Missouri, M Missouri. These jerseys are going to be beautiful if that's what they are. I mean, there's photos of what they looked like back in the day. I don't know. Ordinarily, I'm like, let's just kind of ditch tradition. Let's do our own thing. But the basketball jerseys we have now, I mean, they're not horrible. I don't even hate the yellow one.
The Tiger one is horrible. No, I don't. I despise it.
I don't even hate it as much as other people. But I don't know. Something about these retros. Like, I don't love the football retros. These retro basketball jerseys, though, my God, they're gorgeous. I don't know, man. The black M, it doesn't work for me on helmets a lot of the time. It's not impossible to make it work. It's had good looks. The black M on basketball jerseys is absolutely gorgeous. If they sell these gold jerseys, I will buy one. I bought the white black M jersey last year. I will buy this one as well. I pray these are the new alternates. Keep these in the rotation.
Yeah, they're clean. The ones last year, they wore them. It was Iowa State. Did they wear them again?
Yep. No, they didn't.
No, it was just Iowa State. Yeah, those were clean. I think these will look great. I'm all for throwback jerseys, especially in basketball. Like there's just so much you can do with the basketball jersey to make them look super clean. I hate the yellow Tiger too. So if that's getting scrapped, I'm all for it. We had a good conversation with Dave Matter about the future of the Mizzou, uniforms all around. But so go listen to that. Put in the comments if you're listening on the YouTube what your favorite old Missouri men's basketball uniforms were. Maybe if you liked, and if you're excited about the Block M Missouri. Peyton, your jersey of the week's a guy who won't unfortunately get to wear this jersey.
Yeah, no. But we did touch on this already. I mean, Demoy, he was traded, as we mentioned, for a first-round pick in the G League draft over to the Rip City Blazers. Good for Demoy. Happy to see he's still kicking around. Lakers fans are torn up about this man. They liked Demoy. And, that's a thing Lakers fans do, though. They love everyone that plays well in the Summer League. Taylor Horton-Tucker had like a 4-year career.
He's only 19.
Yeah. So good for Demoy, though. Glad he's still around. Yeah, we touched on it already, though.
Yeah, I'm excited for Demoy. Peyton, I do have to correct you, though. It's the Rip City remix.
Remix, sorry.
As someone who's a big appreciator of G League team names, my personal favorite being the Washington Wizards, which is the Capital City Go-Go, and it's hyphenated. Just some great G League teams out there. I think the Rip City remix is like new too. Like Portland didn't have one for a while, but yeah. Shout out to Moy. My jersey.
I'm gonna cut in. We asked Drew off air who is going to be drafted with that number 1 overall pick, and I asked him from the current Mizzou team. He went with Sean East, so look out for Sean East in a South Bay Lakers jersey next season.
I liked what you and I said, Kenny. I think there's a team that's going to take a punt on Connor Vanover. I said off air, like it's like when you get in a relationship with someone who's got some issues, and you're like, I can fix them. I think there's an NBA coach that's going to see Connor Vanover's just demeanor and size and stature and be like, I'm going to turn that into something.
And before people in the comments get mad at that, just remember Taco Fall was sticking on these G League teams. Okay. And Connor Vanover, he went through the draft process. He got feedback, He was in that one tournament.
Got suspended for it.
Got him suspended. So it's possible.
He would look great in a Greensboro Swarm uniform.
Just
Bull too.
Jack, you keep talking about relationship issues like with this stuff. Is this something you want to talk with us about?
Speaking of unhealthy relationships, my jersey of the week goes to Skip Bayless and the Cowboys. That's an unhealthy relationship right there. Skip Bayless, he posted his video after the Cowboys lost of him throwing all of his Cowboys gear in the trash can. It was an automatic trash can, and the video is just really funny because he's going through and he like shows the camera each piece of gear, and then the trash can just keeps closing and he has to reopen it. And so it takes him forever, and he's just breathing really heavy and uncomfortably like Skip Bayless does whenever he posts this. It was just a funny meltdown. And the Cowboys, my God, they find a way to lose in the playoffs every time. Nothing? No one has anything to add to that?
I thought you guys were going to bring it up. Did you want to bring up your relationship issues?
All right.
I think it's really funny that you went all through all that. We had nothing to say, and you were just
nothing to say.
In some water, so you couldn't even save it. I'll say this: you can tell Jerry Jones is up there in age because the old Jerry, or I guess the young Jerry, he would have ripped Mike McCarthy apart. Like Mike McCarthy would not have made it out of the stadium before being handed his pink slip. So yeah, they got retained, man. I have never, but I'll say this: somebody had a good tweet about it. This is as pre-fired as a coach has ever been. I mean, he would have to like go to the Super Bowl next year to save his job.
Yeah, it's bad. I was shocked too that he got retained. I thought they fired him at halftime. But yeah, shout out Skip. He doesn't have to worry anymore. He can go to Cancun with the rest of the Cowboys. Next up, Sean East.
Like no cap, and he's the main bird.
Sean East, member of the week. Kenny.
Shout out former Cardinals ace Adam Wainwright, who secured a full-time position as a Fox MLB analyst on Thursday. I mean, there are probably some people listening to us that are Cardinals fans, probably excited that Adam Wainwright is no longer pitching for your team, but excited for him to be in the booth. I enjoyed him during the postseason this past year. He's very intelligent, knows a lot about the game, has some good Southern twang to the way he talks, and we know he's a great musician as well. So congrats to Adam Wainwright.
I don't know about that last point, but I mean, him and Yachty, I mean, they have to be the bird segment champs, right? Like we have mentioned them so many times.
Yeah, it's been a while since we got the Cardinals in. I guess it is the off season, but
that's true.
Yeah,
we're gonna stick with the Cardinals for my main bird, but of course, NFL Cardinals, and he doesn't coach there anymore. Cliff Kingsbury, the former embattled Cardinals coach, who, after he was fired by the Cardinals, he took a one-way plane ticket to Thailand or something like that.
Yep.
And just went off the grid. He is interviewing for my Chicago Bears OC job. He, of course, is currently an offensive analyst and the quarterbacks coach at USC. Just adds a lot of fuel to the Caleb Williams fire. I kind of hope he gets the job. I think it'd be so funny. Cliff Kingsbury, of course, looked fantastic in the Johnny Manziel doc.
Noted winner of that. My main bird of the week, I'm sticking in the NFL as well. I'm doing Jim Harbaugh as my main bird of the week because he interviewed for the Atlanta Falcons head coaching job. The Falcons, they're swinging for the fences in terms of name recognition for their next head coach. Interviewed Belichick, interviewed Jim Harbaugh. We'll see. This obviously would be a big thing for both college football, I guess, and the Falcons if Jim Harbaugh decides to bolt for the NFL. I know Michigan's trying to give him a shit ton of money to stay at with the Wolverines, but do you guys think John Harbaugh should become the next Falcons head coach? I'm asking a question because if I just leave it open for feedback, you two will just say nothing. So
It's not the Falcons head coach. I think that's going to Belichick, but Chargers head coach, he makes all the sense in the world. I think
yeah,
it's
that would be
almost
good.
Certainly an option. I don't think he's going to get the Falcons head coach. It seems like it's Chargers or Michigan at this point.
Okay. All right. Kenny, nothing? Still nothing?
Yeah, you
Quiet
seem
over
very tense right now.
Yeah, I'm a
this
little
is very
bit
weird.
flustered.
Bill Belichick owns the city of Atlanta, and him just going there, I think that's just a really sad move by the Falcons, but props to them to find their next coach.
That would be funny. I
You don't think he'd be a fit in Hotlanta?
No.
You like get some hot wings? No. Peyton, what'd you learn this week?
Best thing I learned this week, folks. The Sierra Nevada desert is becoming a battleground. I don't even know if that's actually fully in Nevada, but Nevada football is back is the point. Okay. This was a big Twitter spat. It involves Barry Odom, our favorite old Mizzou coach. Jeff Choate, the new head coach at Nevada, he took over for Ken Wilson, who was absolutely horrible there. He tweeted, planning a flag down here, or down here planning this flag, #launch. And it was a big Nevada flag in the city of Las Vegas. Of course, that's where UNLV
It was an
is.
edit. He wasn't actually there planning.
Yeah, no, he wasn't actually putting it at a big flag down there. I assume it's a recruiting bat signal, but he tweeted that. Barry Odom, how about this? Barry Odom's flexing the social media chops. He quote tweets it with just a photo of the Fremont Cannon. If the Fremont Cannon, of course, is the trophy that's given out to the winner of this rivalry game. UNLV was the winner. And Jeff Choate replies, 28-21, if you know, you know. That is, of course, calling back to a game between him and Barry Odom. And Barry Odom quote tweets it with 40-21, 340 on the ground, if you know, you know. This is in reference to when Arkansas, just a few years ago in 2021, beat Texas 40-21 and ran for 340 yards on the ground. The reason he tweeted that was Barry Odom at the time, defensive coordinator for Arkansas, Jeff Choate at the time, defensive coordinator for Texas. So he got run all over. Jeff Choate did not have a response to this, kind of a mic drop moment for Barry Odom. Good for Barry Odom. Where was this at Mizzou, man? This is fire.
He didn't win enough to do this at Mizzou.
I guess not, but I mean, this was sick. I was like fired up for Barry Odom. Good for him.
That is a good burn. Well done, Sports Talk, Barry.
Kenny? I think this is a post saying that he's down in Las Vegas recruiting is what the actual term is, because a lot of the coaches are on the road at the moment.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good point. What'd you learn, Kenny?
What I learned this week is a follower of ours, and this made me actually pretty excited when I saw the tweets.
This was
Mary
cool.
on X. She is a coach for Prairie State College women's basketball team on the D2 level. And then that was really cool to see. And she was tweeting at us, just saying she was listening to the podcast and heard Jack mention Kyle Riggs. Little miscommunication though, because it ended up being that she knew who Kyle Riggs was, but her friend was Colin Brown, who was also an offensive lineman for the Mizzou Tigers back in the day. Very cool though that she was listening and just kind of tweeted at us, and it was like the Leonardo DiCaprio GIF pointing forward and being like, "Oh my gosh, I know who that is." And very cool to see. It makes my day. I bet it makes your guys' day when people do that.
Yeah, that was sick. Thank you for listening, Mary. And I'm glad. Shout out to Colin. I hope the women's basketball team wins the Illinois Skyway Conference, which is what they said they play in. So
she did. she also gave a good breakdown because we were talking about how Gates is. Well, I think I was the one that brought it up. Was Gates kind of lacking more creativity on offense? And as a coach, she gave like insight as to like why that could be. Talking about the personnel and stuff. So good Twitter interaction. Mari, we're glad you listened.
Yeah. Shout out. We can be a Prairie State College podcast. They're our new favorite team in the Illinois Skyway Conference. My best thing I learned this week. This one I won't even. I don't blame you guys for having no input in. This is kind of just stupid. Ken Pom fun on Twitter, but guys, there's two colleges that have pretty similar names. One plays in the Pac-12. One plays in the Peyton. What conference does Samford play in?
They play in the SoCon.
Oh, I thought you know that off the top of your head. Whatever conference they play in. This was just funny on Twitter. So Ken Pom obviously ranks every single team, and for a while, someone was tracking the distance between Stanford, of course, of the Pac-12, and Samford, the Bulldogs, who are like a mid-major team. It went over a couple of days. Samford won a game. They beat Western Carolina on January 16th. Which meant on Ken Pom, they were only one spot away from Stanford. So it was Stanford, then Samford. This is kind of dumb, but I just thought it was kind of funny. They sound the same. Samford, 16-2 in the league. So maybe a dark horse, I don't know, March Madness team to watch. They get like a 13 seed, but they're one away from passing their very close to same name opponents. Also, scored like 150 points in a game. So high-powered offense from the Bulldogs.
Tell you what, whoever comes out of the Southern is very likely going to be a trendy upset pick. There are good teams in that conference this year. You got Samford, obviously. Western Carolina, the team they beat, they are really good. They're like 15-3 or something from Colwaukee, North Carolina, mind you. You got Furman, who beat Virginia last year. They're in that conference. They're mixing it up. So good basketball conference down there.
Yeah, shout out.
There you go. You got input.
Yeah, thank you. I'm shocked of all of my points. That one is the one that gets any input. They're 80-81 on Ken Pom. If anyone wants to continue to keep track, shout out Bucky McMillan, who is tweeting all of that over the last couple of days. It was just making me laugh. Love a good Ken Pom. Look ahead. That's it. That's all I have. I'm kind of done. I'm going to go about the rest of my day in a sour mood after what happened earlier. Peyton, perhaps you can enlighten it with a joke that we can force Kenny to listen to.
Maybe I could.
Are you not gonna?
Nope.
Oh my God. I've lost all control. All
I
right.
saw him looking it up. It's definitely on his screen right now, and he's
guess
going
we'll
to
end the
say it
show.
in a couple seconds.
No, it doesn't sound like he's going to do it. I guess we'll end the show. I hope everyone enjoyed watching. We thank BetOnline for sponsoring the show. Underwritten presented by them. We'll be back on Monday we'll recap the Florida game for men's basketball. Maybe we'll have a DC by then. Kenny is just sabotaging the screens. Until then,
this one comes from the.
Oh, he kicked him out. Go back and make. Come back.
Knowlton.
Yeah.
Knowlton. What's a pirate's favorite letter?
Arg.
Arg.
Oh,
Arg.
see, you guys, you think it's R, but it's
C.
actually the C. Ho.
Who wrote that one?
I believe Hoda wrote this one.
Meredith Vieira.
Yeah. All right. Well, in the show. Thank you, Hoda, for the joke. We'll see you guys Monday. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Go enjoy the Florida game. We'll see. It was a good interview with Drew. Keep an eye on his on PowerMizzou. Subscribe to that. You'll get his feature about a CY down the road. But until then, everyone have a fun and safe week. See you on Monday.